Livestream. Tonight, our panel of dungeon masters, game masters, referees, storytellers, and players will share their diverse tabletop role-playing game experiences to provide ideas, suggestions, and possibly even some advice for your tabletop RPG sessions. Let's get started. All right, welcome everyone. If that intro got cut off, that's my fault. I clicked the button. Oops. Anywho, welcome to some Rando RPG live stream. I am John Maxley-Auschlow, your host, and I'm truly grateful that you are with us for tonight's live stream discussion on the art of campaign creation. And I sincerely hope you enjoy the conversation. So what do we do here in some Rando RPG live stream? Well, in segments 1 through 4, we discuss topics surrounding tabletop role-playing game hobby with an emphasis on individual experiences, desires, and expectations. In tonight's 4 segments on the art of campaign creation, we hope to provide ideas, suggestions, and food for thought for your tabletop RPG sessions. Then in segment 5, we let down our hair and just talk about nerd issues of interest. And if we meet the giveaway threshold, segment 5 is when we'll determine the winner. So with that in mind, please consider supporting Legion of Myths through the links in the live stream's description. YouTube takes 30%. And Twitch takes 50% of your hard-earned money, while Rumble, PayPal, Streamlabs, and Ko-Fi take between 0 and 5% of your donation. Rumble rants and super chats less than $20 I will read at the end of each segment. $20 or more, I'll interrupt the segment and read your rant or chat as immediately as I can. And $50 or more, which has only happened one time, I will take a drink in your name, and you can force, like a real alcoholic drink. I hope we have alcohol. Find out. And we can force the panel to answer any tabletop RPG related question of your choice right then and there. Of course, we make $100 or more in super chats. There will be a $25, nay, not a $25, a $200, or maybe I'll do two $100. I don't know. Palladium Books or Drive-Thru RPG gift card giveaway during segment 5. Legion Myth YouTube members, as well as tonight's super chatters and Rumble ranters, will have the opportunity to win, but you must be watching at the time of the giveaway to claim your victory, else it rolls over to next week. Don't forget the Legion Myth moderators will time out or even ban people who attack any panelist or any chatter. Attack the argument, not the person, and keep your various social media beefs off my show. This is not your Twitter place to finish up those arguments. Finally, if you like this video, subscribe to all the panelists' channels, which I have not put in the description yet. I will a little bit. If you're watching on video later, they should be there. But please subscribe to all of them. And thank you for your time and support. Now, before we get started here, well, actually, no, I will start with Malachi. Malachi, go ahead and give us a blurb of who you are, what content and products do you create, and what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Malachi, I've been doing this whole thing since about the mid-90s. Got my blog, Malachi's Negaversal Musings. Right now, I think I'm becoming the essay type of blog in term papers with my last 2 posts. Going into
what were they on?
They have both been on John Peterson.
Oh, okay. Actually, I saw one of them. I did see one of them.
Yes, and my not too happy with what he's been putting in the books lately.
Okay, well, go check his Substack for that, and I'll try to get the link. If you guys can just throw in the private chat the links to your channels, I know I could easily find it. It'll just make my life a lot easier, so I can put it in the description for the folks. All right, and then Jade, welcome back to what used to be your show, sir. Who are you? What content and products do you create? Don't forget to unmute. And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me. As Max said, I used to run Gatekeepers, the RPG show where we would cover topics on for game masters or even players to get advice or to get ideas at the very least in directions to take their own games and their own experiences. My experience mostly delves into 3.5 of WotC edition D&D. But I've played more than that. I've played World of Darkness. I've played Exalted. I've played Warhammer 40K. The Dark Heresy, Rogue Trader. I've played a lot of different games over the years, and it was basically told to me that I have something to share. So that's what I'm doing. I'm sharing my thoughts, experiences, and my perspective from my 20 plus years of gaming.
Awesome. And then filling in the last spot in an emergency, so he has no clue what the questions are today.
No idea.
No idea. Unfortunately, the person who was supposed to fill that spot somehow just didn't get back to us before the stream started, so I want a panel of 4. Bear's going to fill it now. Thank you very much for popping in at the last second here. And as always, tell us, who are you? What content and products do you create? And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
I am Bear of the Gen X GM. I have a little channel, a couple thousand of us hanging out, just being buds. It's kind of cool. And I am the producer of the Heroic comic and the Heroic role-playing game. And currently this week, thinking I may have broken King Kamehameha doll when I was on a Hawaiian vacation with the Bradys, because I'm having one of those weeks. Yeah.
God, there's a reference. Wow. All right. Well, unfortunately, maybe in segment 5 we can talk about your week, but we got to get started here, sir. What's that? No, maybe we'll get you drunk enough and we'll talk about anyway. All right, let's start with the art of a campaign creation. That is right. We're going to talk about how to build them, foibles, pitfalls, I don't know, failures, successes, etc. I'm making up words because that's part of my campaign. So we're going to start right off with Malachi right next to me here, and setting the stage. What tools or resources do you use to develop the physical layout of your campaign world?
Mostly what I'm going to do is I usually take a program. My favorite one right now is Hexographer. I'll use that, just get a random setup for the world and go hit the tables. Or I have done random tables for just hex generation too. I like doing the random stuff, get the surprises, get the brain juices going.
Cool. So, wow, you left a lot open there. That's kind of good. I have a whole ton of follow-up questions I can ask for that. So, well, how about this? How do you choose the right environment for your campaign? So you're using Hexographer. Like you said you want to do, let's say, a campaign on the moon, or a campaign in a desert, or a campaign a city campaign. How do you choose the right environment?
Like, what you mean? What I'm going for with just the campaign in general, or if I want to, how I go about like the random generation?
Just for the purposes of, again, this is about setting the stage. So this is kind of the introduction. So when you're just laying out the initial part of the campaign, like for example, no matter what D&D campaign I run, you will go to Ravenloft. I don't care. With that said, I don't start off baking in Ravenloft. I start off where I want the campaign to start, and then that just comes later. So how do you start yours?
For example, I'll use the tables in the 1E DMG. The random hex tiles is specifically there to generate something similar to a medieval Europe setting. So I'll try and either find or create my own set of table that will give me that'll skew toward what I want in the areas. Like if I want more desert, I'm going to get the value so it gets more deserty when I'm rolling.
Do you use anything, say, like encyclopedias or mythology or anything else to help set the tone for how you want to build the campaign, so to speak?
Probably for a fantasy setting, I'd probably pull from Patrol Lord Games Codices, which basically it's historical, but more on the fantasy and mythological side of things.
Okay. All right, let's move on down to Jade. Same question for you, sir. What tools or resources do you use to develop the physical layout of your campaign world?
So physical layout, the maps, the world itself, and how the players actually interact with that. I've got a lot of online resources I use, like Incarnate. There's so many of them. Don John's website for all sorts of generators, be it a town, an inn, or even a magic item shop or something. But I also use pen paper, in the gray matter upstairs, because that's honestly where most of my that's where I start is what's up here, and how do I translate it so that my players can interact with it. So a lot of pen paper, a lot of me drawing out on big rolls of drafting paper. That's kind of what my profession is I'm a drafter. So I've got access to rolls and rolls of paper. So I'll draw a whole city on a B-sized piece of paper just to have it there.
Okay. So how do you decide on, say, like the geographical features of your campaign world? I mean, how do you come up with the ideas that first makes the world look like a fantasy world, but also is grounded in some reality?
So yeah, I'll use, well, words for the most part. Using the vernacular I have, I will describe the basin of a valley to them. Now I'll even go into a little bit Tolkien-esque detail on like what the grass is like, what the trees might be, like what kinds of deciduous or even conifer type trees are around. I will paint them a picture in their mindscape of the world around them. Are there mountains in the distance? Okay, yeah, there might be mountains in the distance. They might look like the Appalachian. They might look like the Rockies. And I can present images from like Google searches on images that describe or actually show what I'm using. I'm not above using AI generated art for personal use in this aspect either. If I can generate something that perfectly matches like my envisioning of what the world is around them, I will do so. But generally, I take into account like where are they on my world map that I've drawn or have made via Incarnate, and I describe what's around them in about a 20-mile radius. Now the characters can't see that far; they can only see maybe a mile out on a good day. But I know what's around, and the characters will know what is within 20 miles because that's walking distance. One day's walking distance. So they know, 20 miles away is a farm. 20 miles in that direction, a giant lake that everybody likes to, go to. So that's how I do it.
Okay. And Bear stepped away. He'll be back in just a moment here. I don't really have another follow-up question on that because I think they start to get outside the mapping schema. So do you do any just hand-drawn maps, or are most of your maps done through Incarnate or Don John?
No, I will do hand-drawn maps. I'll start with like a hex map, a blank hex map, and I will roll on a hex flower grid to determine like what is around me. So with the starting point, the point of the hex flower map is it has a built-in memory based on dice rolls that I could start in a plains, I could stay in a plains as I move to the next hex, or I could move up to a water feature of some kind. Whatever's on my hex flower is, kind of what I'm rolling for. And it's all similar-ish terrain with, some extremes going out as you get to the edges of the hex flower.
Okay. All right, Bear. Same question for you,
Hi.
which is what tools or resources you use to develop the physical layout of your campaign world. For example, the Codex Albana world. And I know,
Well, Codex
to be fair,
Albana is
I'm
part of a
going to
larger
cheat.
world.
Bear has got a whole video series on how he created. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
that exactly, but something like that.
Yeah, I've done a few videos about it. So, as everyone who knows me knows, I always start with a rock on a street in a village, and I surround my players around it. And then as they wander the streets of this fantasy town, I just invent things for them. And no, I start with a high concept. I'm a top-down builder, not an up builder. The up builder thing, I get so tired of hearing it. It's like the battle cry of the OSR. Just start with a village and then expand outwards. Well, I like to give my players a little more variety, a little more verisimilitude, and a little more of a world to be a part of. So for me, I start very high level and work my way down. And when I say I start high level, I start with, how did beings come into existence? How did the world come into existence? What powers are there in the universe that made this all happen? And then eventually I'll get down to the point where in a particular space or town, I'll have a map of the village and I'll know where all the shops are. But I go from the top all the way down to the bottom, and I use tools like Photoshop to make my maps. And I use tools like Jade said, my brain to think stuff up. But I also make a point of using translation tools, encyclopedic guides, real-world history, real-world essays on religion and things like that to find inspiration, because I want my world at the end of the day to make sense within itself so that the players, when they are in it, understand it and relate to it, where I don't have to explain to them, well, yes, but in the fourth age of the trifecta of the Dome, Gorbagal came down from the mountain and created trees. No, you don't, just here's the world. Now here's how it works. And trees and grass, yeah, there are actually parts of my world where I've taken time to worry about the trees and grass because it's important to that section of the world. Otherwise, all I need to know is this conifer, is this deciduous, is this tundra, is this taiga, like that sort of thing. And I learned those lessons the hard way by starting off not knowing what I was talking about, drawing a map with a pen and paper, and then having tons of mistakes, not understanding how cultures worked when they lived next door to each other, and the idea of border pollination and cultural pollination that will happen across through trade, not understanding how religions happen, not understanding that you can't have diametrically opposed cultures side by side with each other. Yes, God. No, it's an 800 number. I'm not answering it. So I try and make it make sense. And to do that, I got to start at the top, figure out what the big picture is, and then zoom in. So Photoshop's one of my biggest tools. My brain's one of my biggest tools. And I use Google like it owes me money.
So now we're related more so on the physical elements of the world with the question, but so how do you handle incorporating, say, fantastical elements into a realistic setting? Like, I don't know, waterfalls that flow backward, or clouds with giants on top of them, or whatever.
You just encountered a waterfall that flows backwards.
Did it?
And if we look,
the
King's Lake right at the top where you guys sailed out, there was the reversing falls, right? But the thing is that if we look at our own world, there's a place in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, where I grew up called the Bay of Fundy, which has one of the highest tidal bores in the world. And there's a river that goes up there, which goes up to the city of Moncton, which sometimes will look like it's flowing backwards when the big tidal bore comes in the Bay of Fundy. It'll push water back up the river. So that's all I needed to know. I have a massive tidal bore right at the mouth of this thing. There's a little waterfall there, and most of the time the water's going out, except when the high tide comes in, the water's going back up the fall. Not requiring magic, not requiring me to have gods come down and monkey around with it, just basic hydrodynamics that exist in our own world. If that makes sense. There are no giants in the clouds.
Oh.
Yeah. Such.
And so, I mean, since you already touched on this one, I'll give this to you as well. How do you incorporate the history and culture of the setting into the physical concepts of the campaign?
Well, geopolitics are going to happen, right? Terrain will okay, so culture is downstream from terrain. The terrain will determine the type of culture you're going to have. The steppes of Russia created a very barbaric group of people because they had to compete for very scant resources, very difficult tribes, herds of animals to hunt and kill. So they wound up becoming raider cultures that would raid down onto the Eastern European plain and into what we call Ukraine today and parts of the Balkans and what have you. And that's what they did. And they had to do it because otherwise they would not survive. So you need to be looking at your terrain, number one, and then look at the world today or the world in history and look at the types of cultures that have evolved on those types of terrains and the terrains next to them. And now you'll have some ideas. It's all well and good to say, I'm going to have mountain Egyptians. Okay. But pyramids in the Nile are a very specific thing, and mountains are not going to be conducive to that type of a culture. So what part of the Egyptians are you going to bring over? If it's pyramid building, you pick the wrong terrain for that because it's not the best place in the world. I mean, yes, we do have examples of high up building like
the ziggurats of the Amazon.
It's specifically Machu Picchu, right?
Yeah.
That is a mystery. Like, we don't sit around going, well, Machu Picchu makes perfect sense. We have people literally debating it to this day.
Well, yeah, it's alien landing pads, so let's
whatever it might be. The point being, you need to look at the terrain, look at what types of cultures in our world developed on those terrains, and now you can have those types of cultures as inspiration for the cultures you're creating. And if you're doing fantasy, it's even more fun because you have to look at things like trade, movement, transportation. Geopolitics will determine a lot. Where are your rivers? Your rivers are going to cover and control a lot of how your cultures are going to develop. Where are your ports? The ports that are ice-free. Do you have ice-free ports in your northern hemisphere, or are they all frozen up in the winter? Because that's going to affect the culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a level of thought that most people go, oh, I don't need to put that much thought into my world. But then you look at the worlds that are all celebrated as the greatest designed fantasy worlds out there that everybody loves to play in, and that much thought was put into them at all levels. So it's one thing to say you don't need that level, but if we look at the successful published scenario settings, most of them have that level of thought put into them, or at least the ones that have lasted a long time.
I have a whole bunch of follow-up questions for you, but unfortunately, this isn't the panel. This is not the panel for it. Okay, so and we have to move on. Actually, no, I want to see if there's anything you guys want to say to each other based on the answers that were given here before we move on to the next question. Anything you want to address from what any of y'all said?
Yeah, I'm actually doing quite a bit of the same that Bear's doing with my next campaign. I'm taking a look at the different cultures, the different peoples, and I am looking at how they interact. Are they at war with one another? Why are they at war with one another? What are the fundamental differences between them? What can I use as a game master to get my players interested in these conflicts between these peoples? And what kind of adventures or even misadventures can be had based on cultural differences, or even religious aspects of the different tribes that I've got going. Because my next game is going to be set in a Bronze era, so there's going to be a lot of people mixing from all over the world, and especially when they get to the bigger trade cities, you're going to have loads of people who don't get along with one another. And it can be a very tense or explosive situation, and the players are going to have to figure out how to navigate that.
Okay, I'm actually adding a question to the panel today. It's a quick, and it's for all of you. So please jump in, each one of you. What would you say to somebody who's intimidated by all this? Like, wow, I thought I could start small, or I didn't think I had to think about all this, and if it didn't make sense, I could just say it was magic, or whatever. What would you say to somebody that is intimidated by what you guys just said about how much work needs to go into this? Because he's hoping to start his campaign, I don't know, 3 weeks from now. This is open to everybody.
Okay, well, I would say, do what you feel comfortable with and go for it.
Yeah.
I would say start with a village. And it's rare you'll give that piece of advice. But if your campaign's 2 weeks out and you don't have the time to play nice, pick a village and go from there. If everybody's character pitches are, well, I want to be a dwarf from the high mountains. I want to be a samurai from the far east. I want to be a swamp raider from the tropics of the south. Well, then pick a big fucking city. But pick a neighborhood in that city. Pick that dark side of the city, that place where all the scum and villainy exist, and then you can go from there. And then as you start your campaign, you can take the time to build it out after. But ultimately, you shouldn't be doing this with only 2 weeks to go. That's piss poor GMing, my friend. Sorry to say.
Well, let me write those notes down.
I mean, there is something to be said for the one night planning GM, where you only plan one night at a time, or you only play the game one night at a time. That's certainly a way of playing the game and mastering the game. And if you're going to do that, as Bear said, start in a very large trade city, a place that is connected throughout the world that everyone would know. And go from there and see how it goes. See what players want to do and see what interests players as you play, if you're going to do it that way.
Yeah, or pick up Over the Wall or whatever it's called. Over the Wall and Other Adventures. Beyond the Wall. Beyond the Wall.
Yeah, Beyond the Wall.
Beyond the Wall.
Pick it up not for the game itself, but for the fact that there's this fantastic village building mechanic within the game where you and the players sit down, roll dice, and build your village. That can be a lot of fun. And then if you pick up further afield, which is they're getting beyond the village now and going higher levels and into the world beyond, they have a fantastic system for taking a hex map, drawing some terrain on it, and then rolling dice and finding points of adventure. And then you can give those to the players to make up. And they can make up like, okay, well, here we have some sort of unnatural thing. Go ahead and tell me what that is, please. Over here, we have some sort of mysterious event. Please tell me what that is. And then together you can build that world out. And if you're not doing it in face-to-face for the larger setting, you can have a lot of fun because each person is helping create something, just a sentence, a paragraph, whatever, that you are going to later have to flesh out as a GM, that the rest of them aren't going to know about. And it can be really, really fun. Like when I did it with my players, I wound up with a place called the Rust Bowl of Mechanus. I don't know what the fuck the Rust Bowl of Mechanus is, but it's there on the map. And if my players ever go to it, I'm going to have to figure out what the fuck the Rust Bowl of Mechanus is, but it's there. This is a very cool way to do things, and I cannot recommend those games enough.
I used to use, what are they called? Well, the central casting stuff for characters, but what are those city books?
City books. I think they're just called
it was from
city
Flying Buffalo or whatever it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, I haven't used them in years, but I used to use those a lot when I was younger, and I wanted to expand something out. But yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of good resources out there for folks, as they're saying. Google's your friend. Reading some history, understanding how things work. Now, whether that's important for your campaign or not is up to you. But I think there's a lot of good advice. But I think we're also going to move on to the next. Oh no, I said I was going to start doing chats, so they still made sense. So hold on, I only starred one. So there we go. Full Metal Dragon says, "Yeah, give us worlds, not scrub towns." I mean, it is a campaign, right?
Yeah.
Now, people have different definitions of campaigns, but we won't get into that here.
Well, where did we start Codex Albana? Did we start it in a village? No. Did we start it in a city? No. We started at a fair out in the middle of nowhere at an old battlefield, right? That's where we started the campaign, where everybody is a visitor to that place. So you don't have any of that territorial, this is my land, my people type thing. Everybody's sort of tribed up, and that was a lot of fun watching you guys deal with all that. So you can really start in some interesting ways if you've got the time to do the work.
That then deals with nothing.
Whatever your majesty wants.
Stop that. All right, let's go on.
Lord.
Here. That's right. You know what? I'm gonna bask in it. Thane might not, but yes, please keep that coming. All right, let's move on. We're gonna start with Jade on this one. The next question for the panel is: what methods do you use to introduce your players to this campaign setting that you spent all that time putting together? You're muted, sir. Which I appreciate, but we need to hear you now.
Yes. So my inciting incident is something that introduces them to the dangers of the world, first and foremost. It's something that gets them moving and rolling dice immediately as soon as they sit down at the table. Now I normally start with something like a fair, some of the like folk tales or the folk fair type things where the players can interact with, traditions of the world or traditions of the people they are there with. And then, as they start getting comfortable, that's when I rip the rug out from under them and throw them into danger. And then they start realizing that it is a world of danger. It is a world where, survival is not guaranteed. And from that point, I just keep building and keep ratcheting up the tension and then I will eventually let them release the tension as they explore and as they complete missions or complete goals and objectives of their own. But to actually get them into the world and show them, introduce them to the peoples and such, it's typically something to do with traditions and that the people have in the world.
So what steps do you take to ensure that, through those traditions and as you make that, do that rug pull, to ensure the setting is consistent throughout the campaign?
Well, I take notes first and foremost. I've got stacks and stacks of notes everywhere on what I have. But as far as what's keeping it consistent is consistent language, consistent imagery. So again, I'll use Google, to no end, to get the right imagery I want, and I will present that imagery, at the table. I might even go as far as looking up traditional folk dances and traditional folk foods and such at, let's say, because a lot of my stuff is based out of Ireland. It's, my ancestral heritage. So I'll go to Ireland and I will look for traditional festivals during whatever time of the year my game is.
Go to Ireland and look for traditional festivals?
You took it from me.
Man, I want to play with your campaign because that's some dedicated motherfucking GM.
Actually, I've been to Ireland. I have been there.
Brian, have you been to England? Sorry.
And so I have actually met the people. I have actually lived there for a time. But I will go, looking back into, those heritage roots. I'll be looking at, what festivals, existed, 100, 300, 600 years ago. and I will pull that information in, and I will make changes here and there. But I will note what changes I have made, and I will, keep referring back to my notes, because I'm not going to run out of the book. I'm going to run out of my notes. And that's how I keep it consistent. Is I always have my notes stacked up beside me.
Okay. Bear, moving on. Same question for you. What methods do you use to introduce your players to the campaign setting?
I'm a huge fan of the call to adventure, right? I'm a huge fan of you guys are just doing your thing and then things happen. And then you get yanked into it and suddenly the tide has pulled you along. And now you're standing in the middle of the woods yelling at Hungar's character. That's what I like. I like giving you guys some NPCs to see which one becomes the pet, so that I can kill them later and break your hearts, and stuff, and give you a reason to go forward. I like to look for the players who aren't feeling connected, so I connect them with a lightning bolt from God right up their ass that they didn't see coming. That's how I do it. I'm not a fan of you meet in a tavern. Though I did that one time. It was really fun. And as they were all getting around the table, the one player who was playing this sort of scribe character just starts muttering to himself at the table, "There's always 7. There's always 7." They're like, what? Oh, there's 6 of us. There's always 7. And I suddenly had to create a 7th fucking character on the spot because I wanted him to be right. So let's do it, You got to pull players in. You just got to. So find a way to hook them, find a way to grab them, find a way to get them in. Be it they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now everybody who was in that place at that time is an enemy of the state because the state has decided that was an uprising because maybe there were some rebels there. And now the players have been misidentified as rebels and they're on the run, and who knows where that'll lead. Or maybe fate, and there's a wise man who wanders in and walks up and says, "You with the beard, you're the one who did the blah, 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 blah." And then they get sucked in that way. And then maybe later they find out the guy's a raving lunatic and he was just using stage magic tricks to try and do that whole sort of read a crowd thing. Who knows? But find a reason to get him in other than, "Hey, you want to go raid that dungeon and get some money? That sounds like fun. Let's do that." Because that's fucking Bobo. And I don't run fucking Bobo games. It's just the way it is for me.
I gotta admit, I am a fan of the Elder Scrolls entrance into games. You're all locked up together, and for whether you committed the crimes or not,
You're in prison. Or
Yeah.
you're about to get executed.
Yep. All right, Malachi, same question for you. What methods do you use to introduce your players to the campaign setting?
I'm like a lot like Jade, keep it simple to start, keep it social, get that role playing, get everybody comfortable with each other. I may even do the tavern depending on how I'm starting the game up, depending if I'm having an open table or not. I think tavern's the best way for an open table. And then, as the characters interact, they're going to get to know things. They're going to find things out. But, if they're not going to go hunting, go researching anything, I'm not going to just give it to them. And pretty much like Bear, once they get comfortable, pull the rug out from underneath them.
So what
unless they do it themselves.
Well, that's always the best.
Yeah.
Bear, it's not your turn yet, sir. We'll come back to you. So, Malika, what elements do you include to make your campaign setting? Remember, we're talking about the physical aspects here, but the campaign setting immersive for the players.
Lots of research, getting, like Jade said, like the images, finding that.
So none of you guys do easy mode? I'm out. I was looking for the quick fix.
If you're creating a setting, I don't think there really is a quick fix unless you go and you pull the campaign setting box it off your shelf.
I got you.
You're
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt like that.
No, you're going to have to put the work in. You have to research. You're going to have to read. You're going to have to steal if you have to.
Ooh, stealing. I like that. All right, Bear, we'll open it up to everybody to talk now. You had a point you wanted to make?
Yeah, I don't wait for you guys to get comfortable, as I think I clearly demonstrated in our campaign that we're playing in. I just throw your asses into the mix, and you can get comfortable on the road, motherfuckers. I'm not interested in, like you said, "I am Forsuvius. I come from the far south, and I am here to sing the songs of my..." Shut the fuck up. There's something chasing us, and they want to murder us. Run. Find find
Yeah.
out each other's story later around the campfire when you've gotten away from the danger.
Yeah, but I mean, a player can easily start the danger with that, with just sticking his nose where it doesn't belong. And I'm all for that happening.
It's really funny how similar Bear and I are in philosophy on this. Just he's able to actually make it work 100 times better than me.
I doubt that.
The campfire chat is also a way to get your players invested in the game world. If a character, if players have specific backstories to their characters, it's not a requirement. It's nice when it happens. And I will actually read through. I've read through 10 pages of backstory before for characters. And I enjoyed reading the story, and I found ways of tying that character intrinsically to the world as like permanent bond. When a player gives me a character who's married, has kids, or is bonded in service to some person in some lineage, some place, I'm going to include those things. I might ask for a slight change or slight edit to the story, mostly in wording or place names, but I'm going to tie them to the world. I'm going to find ways to make sure that character is intrinsically part of the world. And I have found that if you are willing to go into the campfire chats, take notes of what the characters or what the players are saying their characters' backstories are or what their histories are, and you're willing to take those notes and figure out how to tie them into your game as it's playing, or even tie it to whatever your main antagonist might be at that moment. You're going to find that your players are going to become engaged faster because you're listening to them. You are making a world of their effort, of their decisions and choices they have made.
Yeah.
Do you think that the campfire chat is better for I get what you're saying, and I've actually utilized that as well. I especially love the idea when players come up with their own kind of wives' tales and little lore myths and so forth, like the pot of gold under the rainbow, kind of thing. Like, do we investigate it? Do we not? And then I, as a game master, go, do I want that to be real or not? But do you, in terms of overall setting, and I'm not saying you gave a bad answer, you gave a really great answer, but let's bring this to the 10,000 foot view for a second. Are there things that they can do around the campfire that can affect that? Or is this more just, these are things that will affect the characters later on and not necessarily the world?
I would say that it can affect the world that they are in. It can affect the future of where the campaign's going. Most definitely, especially if you find a nugget in there to use and twist on them. To take a character's wife, for example. Like this actually happened to my character this past Saturday. My character's wife was attacked by was an elder evil type being, and I'm like, okay, well now it's time to go to war against that thing. So because my game master took that element and used it in the game, my character is tied to this world. I feel that my character is tied to the world. If your characters are helping you build the world as you're playing, it's also their world, not just yours. And if they feel it's like it's their world, they're going to care. They're going to care about the NPCs. They're going to care about, the village, and they're going to try to prevent the village from burning down. Whatever, the villain or the dragon comes down from the mountain to burn the village down, they're going to try to stop it if they're invested. But as far as campfire chats go, they can be simple, like little minuets that happen for 10, 20 minutes of game time while you're prepping something else, getting the next encounter prepped. They can also happen outside of the table, away from the table. I can go have a beer with my buddies and we can be talking about the game the next, coming session. And they're like, yeah, I really want this for my character, my character has this in their past. They're an old war vet, and the things they fought were orcs. I'm like, okay, so your character might have some PTSD from fighting orcs for so long. Your character might have a problem, with a peaceful half orc who's showing up, in the area. You might draw steel without knowing it. It might be one of those things you make a will check to prevent yourself from drawing steel on them.
To be fair, as a player, I would do that anyway. All orcs are evil.
Yeah. I mean, sure. Orcs, goblins, hobgoblins, sure. But at the same time, like having those chats with your players, even outside of the table, away from the table, in a comfortable setting, like you can, talk about the game, the next, coming session. And they're like, yeah, I really want this for my character, I really want this for my character has this in their past. They're an old war vet, and the things they fought were orcs. I'm like, okay, so your character might have a problem, with a peaceful half orc who's, showing up, in the area. You might draw steel without knowing it. It might be one of those things you make a will check to prevent yourself from drawing steel on them. build a world from those actions as well and those words.
Okay. Anything else you guys want to chime in on or follow up on that somebody said or that you want to address further? Else we can move on. All right, looks like we can move on. I got a super chat here to read. He bought his way onto the panel. He said, let's get this party started. I want a gift certificate. That's right. Remember, if we make $200 in super chat, $100 in super chats, it's $200. I'm either going to do two $100 or one $200. I haven't decided yet. Gift certificate at doing segment 5 of the stream. So there we are, 1/10 of the way in.
Come on, guys, let's get those super chats going because Daddy needs to win one.
So
I think you should do 2.
2 100s. I can do that.
I think you should do 1 so I can get a collection of print-on-demand stuff just for me.
Well, how about this? We'll see who takes first place. No, I'm kidding. All right, let's we got to end this segment. Good one. Next one, I just want to. Actually, I got a new way of doing this. So if you out there, I'll put this up because it's still that time. If you think you have some presence and charisma, the ability to infotain, edutain, a good AV setup free from noise pollution, and an interest in discussing tabletop RPGs in this format, then join the Some Rando RPG livestream Discord. The link to that is in the description. To stay tuned for future topics, help us get to know you, and maybe we'll get you on the show to talk about your experiences. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this. If you enjoy, I cannot talk, I quit, game over, whatever. Subscribe so that I can get voice therapy, speech therapy here. If you enjoy this discussion, please like this video and subscribe to all of the panelists' channels. That's right, they are in the description at this point.